All right, good evening. Thank you for all coming out this evening on this drizzly evening. I don't know if you all got rained on your way in, but we are getting a little bit of rain. So welcome to the regular meeting of the Monrovia City Council and the 77th Monrovia City Council, and in these council chambers this Tuesday, February 4th at 7:30, I'll call it to order at 7:33 p.m. And we are going to start off with in honor of Eloise May Loskamp, born January 25th, to Kyle and Megan Loskamp. So welcome, Eloise. Very cute. All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And we are going to then proceed with our invocation by Pastor Joel Larson, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Sergio Jimenez. Pastor.
Good evening, everyone. Let us pray. Gracious God, we thank you for the gift of this day. We thank you that when you created the world, you called it good, and we see your goodness as we walk through our neighborhoods. We see the small buds on the trees spring forth with new life. We hear yellow finches happily chirping, reminding us that you are caring for all of creation. Give us eyes to see your goodness all around us. We also know that our creation is waiting to be made new and for all to be made right when Jesus Christ returns. And God, we are heartbroken over the devastating wildfires. We pray for those who've experienced devastating loss. We pray for your comfort and your strength. Pray for our neighbors in Altadena, Pasadena, and Sierra Madre. Pray for each person, God, and family and that community, that they would see your goodness even in the midst of this profound loss. For we know that you are a God who can bring beauty even out of ashes. Please give us each wisdom and compassion and generosity as we respond in practical ways to help friends and family and neighbors who've experienced this loss. And we lift up to you our city council and our city leadership, and we pray you'd give them wisdom and courage and blessing as they lead our beloved Monrovia community. We ask you to give them their heart, and your vision for the common good of our city, that they may help our city continue to thrive. And we pray for every child, youth, and adult of Monrovia that they will experience hope and they will have access to all the resources they need for their mental, physical, spiritual health and growth. We ask you to be with our leaders now, be with each of us, God, now as we seek to do good and justice and mercy so that all of Monrovia would thrive. We pray this in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Please rise and face our nation's flag. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, can we have the roll call, please?
Yes, Council Members Belton.
Here.
Jimenez.
Here.
Spicer.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Dr. Kelly.
Here.
And Mayor Shevlin.
Here. We had no closed session this evening, so we don't have a report of closed session.
Actually, Mayor,
moving-
if I could interrupt, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
The council did meet in closed session last
Oh,
week for
yes,
the council
yes.
retreat regarding the one item on the posted agenda, which was the city manager's performance evaluation. All members of the council were present and took no reportable action that day.
Thank you very much. Last week was a lifetime ago. Okay, then moving on then to our presentations and proclamations. We have PR1, which is introduction of the 2025 New Horizon Club and 2025 Gadabouts Club board members. And we have Tiffany Peterson, our recreation supervisor, is here to make that introduction.
Thank you, Mayor Shevlin. Good evening, Mayor Shevlin and City Council members. This evening, we have the pleasure of assisting you with recognizing the 2025 Senior Club Board members. Before sharing our appreciation for each of them, we would like to provide some information about the club and the meaningful impact they have given to our community. First, we have the New Horizons Club, which meets every Tuesday. They were founded in 1974 and has become an integral part of the senior programming, fostering a vibrant community members and guests can connect, converse, and learn. The club fosters friendships, mutual support, and loyalty among its members while hosting engaging speakers, entertainment, raffles, monthly birthday celebrations, bingo, and nutritious meals. This club serves as a beacon of social connection, encouraging seniors to engage with one another, remain active, and enrich their lives. With the help of the board members, the New Horizon Club has grown to 60 active members. Next, we have the Gadabouts Club, which meets every Wednesday. The Gadabouts established in 1978 and has played a significant role in our senior programming. The club aims to provide seniors with an opportunity to gather, exchange information, and learn. Additionally, it offers participation in recreational activities, promoting social interaction, friendship, and mutual support among clubs. Club activities include guest speakers, entertainment, birthday celebrations, and bingo, along with also a nutritious meal. This setting allows older adults to socialize, have lunch, and build friendships in a healthy and fun environment. With efforts and encouragement from those board members, Gadabouts has grown to 65 active members. As a whole, the clubs have increased their participation by at least 15 more members over the last year and a half. We are thrilled to see the clubs thriving so well and look forward to meeting more participants in future.
Tiffany, what about the one that, I don't think it has a club name, the one that's on Mondays?
Commingle Mondays, yeah. So as of last week, I think, or actually this coming week, we have about 70 participants
Wow.
right now. So it varies from week to week, but we range between, I would say, 50 to 60 each Monday. But with this coming Monday, we have our Valentine's Day celebration. So right now, we're actually, I think we're about 70 participants right now.
So is it a true commingle, or do you have people coming
It's
that
a
don't go
variety
to
of-
either one?
Yeah, it's actually a variety of both clubs as well as people that just like to drop in. It's definitely more of a drop-in program, but we see a variety of both of our clubs joining as well as just regular participants coming daily.
Great.
Yeah. At this time, we'd like to honor and recognize 9 members of our New Horizons Club and 5 members for our Gadabouts. Tonight, we'll be congratulating each member with a certificate of recognition and a Monrovia keepsake. So at this time, I'm going to start with the New Horizons board. So if I could have, yeah, we're going to do a
Come on
group
down.
photo. So if I could ask the council to come down, and then I'll name off all of our board members for each of the clubs. So first off, for our New Horizons Club, we have President Lupe Delgado. Come on up. We have our Vice President, Connie Gillian. Our second Vice President, Helen Torres. You guys can make your way to the stage. Our Recording Secretary, Craig Miller. Our Corresponding Secretary, Delcini McMillan. Our Treasurer, Roger Augustine. And our Sergeant at Arms, Patty McFarland. Okay. Okay, I got you. Yeah? Okay. No, you're okay. So we have. Our next club is our Gadabouts Club. We have our president, Irma Robles. Come on up. Our secretary, Jane Hammond, and our treasurer, Caroline Leonard. Thank you. So just one last congratulations to all of our senior board members. We appreciate you all, and we look forward to a great 2025. Thank you, council.
All right.
Congratulations. Go and have fun. All right, and then we have PR2 proclaiming February 2025 as Black History Month, and we have Barbara Golar from Monrovia Doherty Black Alumni Association here to receive the proclamation, and Dr. Kelly will present that. Come on up.
Yes.
If you'd like to, you can listen while Dr. Kelly reads.
Yes. Thank you, Madam-
Proclaims.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's an exciting time. Whereas during Black History Month, we celebrate the many achievements and contributions made by African Americans to our economic, cultural, spiritual, and political development. And whereas much of Monrovia's strength and character, past and present, can be attributed to African Americans in the community. And whereas this should not just be a month-long celebration, but a daily dose, as African Americans have played a central role in our nation's history and our country, is great because of our diversity. And whereas the Monrovia Doherty Black Alumni Association, in partnership with the City of Monrovia, is hosting events throughout the month, including live performances, an information booth, displays, and interactive activities at the library, special story times, as well as a children's art festival at the community center with MUSD and MDBAA. Now, therefore, I, Becky Shevlin, Mayor of the City of Monrovia, California, along with the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of February 2025 as Black History Month, and encourage the community to learn more about contributions made by notable African Americans and take part in one of the many Black History Month celebrations occurring in Monrovia, dated this 4th day of February 2025. Thank you.
Do I speak now?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Actually, we had our kickoff last Sunday. Oh, what is it? Yeah, on Sunday. Sorry about that. At the Doherty Museum in our celebration of Black History Month, and we had a talk about A. Philip Randolph and celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters and maids. Also, just tonight, we just recently partnered up with the adults part of the library that we had art tonight, and went off and left our artwork that we did tonight in the car. So I wanted to
Was
show
Sheila
that.
there too?
Sheila was there
Does
too.
she have her art with her?
Did you bring it in?
No?
Okay, so we both left it out in the car. But anyway, thank you so much for this long partnership that we have, and really looking forward to seeing you all at our activities that we have.
I tell you what, you can display it at the children's art event this month.
We can do that, huh?
Yeah.
If there's space.
We'll make sure there's space.
Oh, okay, okay.
So
Thank you.
Can we come down and
Yes,
see your
and thank you once
proclamation and
again.
do a photo? Okay. All right. Moving on then, we have our student government representative report, and we have,
Have a birthday.
my, oh my, whose birthday could it be?
It is a birthday
For Miss Shevlin.
for Miss Becky Shevlin. Mayor
Thank you,
Becky
thank
Shevlin.
you.
Am I gonna bring it all the way around here?
So when is your birthday?
My birthday is on Tuesday, February 11th. Don't you know we're having a party? We're getting, yeah. Yeah, I rented out the theater. I invited the whole city and everything.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Cha-cha-cha,
Happy birthday to you.
cha-cha-cha.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear
And many more.
Becky. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll pass. I'll pass.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. I got it first. This is awesome.
Those napkins, I thought it was a mall.
So did I.
I said, my God, we're gonna have ice cream now.
Wanted to root
Sarah
your
did
foot.
it. She's very creative.
Okay. Then we will proceed now with our student government representative report, and Ms. Rodriguez.
Good evening, Mayor Shevlin, members of the council, and members of the community. Now that our winter formal snowflake soiree has passed, we are now focusing on getting all our spring and winter sports posters for their very own senior nights completed. As well, now moving into our spring season, we are shifting our focus to planning our spring rally, which we finally came up with our theme, and our theme is Nickelodeon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then, so you just got back, when did you return then for your, this is then the second semester?
We returned to school about 2.5 weeks ago.
Okay, and so you, on the countdown now for that graduation?
Yes.
All right. Okay.
Hey,
well,
Jasmine, speaking of graduation, if you run into any of the students that are seniors and they can't afford their cap and gown, would you get their name and stuff for me? An alumni from the class of 73, 75 has put funds together to help the kids that can't afford that.
That's very nice.
So just let me know, okay?
Okay, I will,
All
for
right,
sure.
we'll take care of them.
Thank you for joining us tonight as I continue to munch my cupcake. Okay, do we have any changes to our order of business this evening? Okay, then on our consent calendar, this is on our consent calendar, those are items CC1 through CC4, considered ordinary business and can be enacted by one motion. So unless there's something that needs to be discussed, pulled, questions, do we have a motion?
I'd like to move for approval.
I'll second it.
We have a
Good.
motion and a second without any further discussion and no objections, so approved. Okay, moving on then to public input. And I know we have a small crowd here this evening, but I did want to point out, so many times we just assume that everybody knows what public input is, but this is the time when the public can come forward and speak on any item not on our agenda. And so we encourage you to fill out a card, but even if you don't fill out a card, you can come forward, state your name, and you can address the city council. We ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes if you can, and just be respectful. And so this evening, do we have, and I did want to mention then, if you want to comment on any other agendized item, those you can provide public input as well. Same process, fill out a card, and we will call you at the time the item is called for discussion. So do we have any speaker cards?
Madam Mayor, Brenda Trainer.
You look like the mad scientist tonight, Brenda.
I'm glad you recognize that I did my finest Einstein crazy hair for you, and to be not quite the mad scientist, but the Medea scientist.
Okay.
Tonight, we want to invite you all to our next meetup, which will be Wednesday, February 12th. Now, since there's already cupcakes out here, I don't know that I have a better prize for you, but who can tell me what LIDAR stands for?
LIDAR?
Yes. Okay, no prizes.
Let me Google it.
No, Googling. Googling doesn't count. No,
What's
no,
the answer,
no.
Edward?
It's basically laser vision.
Ah.
It is incorporating laser. If you know that really annoying beep that your car makes every time you back up, and it's good for you, but it's kind of annoying sometimes. Well, that's using LIDAR. It is, and we have a company here in Monrovia that is going further with LIDAR than most other people with advanced chip manufacturing and designs and ideas. They're doing it in the fourth dimension. They're incorporating lasers and artificial intelligence. And it's a company called Silk Technologies. They're right on Huntington Boulevard, Huntington Drive. I'm making it a really big street. And our meeting for Medea Tech will be next Wednesday, beginning at 6:30. And we will be there at the facility getting a tour of some of the applications that they have in automation, in advanced applications, in robotics, as well as pizza and sodas, and lots of fun networking after the meeting. And the public is invited. Tickets are available for $12. Students get in for only $6. We'll give you pizza, we'll give you sodas, we give you the great tour, and you'll learn about LIDAR and what it really means. And we hope that you all, as well as anybody in the public, can join us. You can get tickets on Eventbrite by going to MedeaTech.org. That's MadiaTech.org. And you all know that Medea stands for Monrovia, Arcadia, Duarte, Irvindale, and Azusa. Glendora is the 6th member that supports Medea Tech launch here. We're an organization that's been around since 2014, supporting the technology and entrepreneurial community in the heart of the San Gabriel Valley.
What's the address?
Medea Tech.
No, the address.
Oh, of Silk Technologies. It's available on the invite that you will get. It is 181 West Huntington Drive.
And you said Glendora has joined the group
Yes.
as well? Kind of hard to add a G to that
Yeah,
acronym.
we didn't want to add a new letter. Thank you very much.
At what time is the tour?
6:30 is when the meeting starts.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We hope to see you all. And anybody else? Bring your friend.
Anyone else? Anyone else wanting to address the council on matters not on the agenda?
Madam Mayor, there's the Quiroz family was in the back, and I think they expressed an interest in speaking. I don't know if they're going to speak after all. Ahorita es la oportunidad que pueden hablar públicamente. ¿Gustan hablar o quieren esperar para otra oportunidad? Okay, she wants to speak. She's just not familiar with the system, how it works.
Okay, I mean, she can come forward and
Okay, si gusta puede venir aquí.
this is for
Al
something
frente.
that's not on the agenda?
Yes, es
Okay.
algo que no está en la agenda, ¿verdad? Ok, venga, tiene que venir aquí al frente, da su nombre y su domicilio.
So you're going to interpret?
It would
as
be
you talk?
inappropriate for me to interpret. Okay,
Oh,
okay.
Yo,
I thought
aló,
Alice was going to do it.
buenas
I didn't know.
noches a todos ustedes.
Okay, she said hello and good evening to all of you guys.
Mi nombre es Salud Quiroz y mi esposo, ¿cómo?
Her name is
Vicente.
Vicente Quiroz.
Vicente Quiroz, ajá. Y aquí la razón por la cual estamos aquí en esta noche, por la cual estamos aquí, porque hay muchas situaciones, razones que hemos pasado. Y quiero en esta noche aclarar algo en pocas palabras de que hemos pasado una situación muy difícil con mi hijo.
Okay, so they're here this evening to talk about a matter that's difficult, and they're going through a difficult time situation with their son.
And Ms. Salud, I believe you and I have spoken a few times,
Yes.
and I believe that you've spoken, did you talk to her, Dylan, or did the? Yeah, I just want to make sure that this is what we're talking about. I'm trying to make the connection here. Okay.
Esto hace tiempo que pasamos esa situación con mi hijo y nunca, no se hizo justicia con mi hijo. Quedó mal, dañado de su mente por por un vecino que lo dañó y lo golpeó y lo asaltó y no hubo justicia con mi hijo.
She's referring to a situation where her son, something happened, it was a neighbor that
Correct.
attacked your son, assaulted him, and they're here because they believe that there was not justice done.
Sí, no hubo justicia. No hubo justicia con mi hijo y hemos luchado durante muchos años y mi hijo quedó muy dañado y estamos con él siempre cuidándolo. No podemos ir a los lugares porque él siempre va con nosotros. No lo dejamos solo porque necesita mucha ayuda él.
So their son was affected by this, of course, and so he lives with them, and
eso es lo que estamos aquí porque cuando nosotros dijimos que mi hijo había sido asaltado, no le hicieron justicia a él y hasta de ese tiempo atrás, desde hace años atrás, él está afectado y está siempre bajo medicamento.
so her son's still suffering from this event that took place, and he's taking
Hazte
medicine.
pa' acá. y el hombre que lo atacó ahí está, muy muy, pues,
And the gentleman who attacked him is still
muy, ¿cómo le puedo decir? Tranquilo, o, como si no hizo nada, como si no hizo nada. Y pues a mí me toca cuidar a mi hijo y mi esposo y cuidarlo a él porque él ha pasado muy duro esa situación con ese vecino que le pegó y me le quebró las quijadas, me lo dañó de su cabeza, lo dañó muy feo y desde esos años atrás estamos sufriendo nosotros, pero primeramente él está sufriendo mucho, mi hijo. Sufre y nosotros también de verlo cómo él sufre.
Yeah, so she's just reiterating that they're suffering a great deal due to this incident, and her son's also suffering a great deal.
And thank you, and I know that you are suffering, and we had spoken, and I had hoped that you would be able to be assisted through our community policing department. Dylan, did you want to?
So you want me to translate that first?
Oh,
Or
sure.
it's up to you. Or go ahead, Dylan, I'm sorry.
So I'll speak. So and then
They'll
I'll
translate.
stop so that
There
you can
you-
translate.
thank
So
you.
Sherry will translate for me.
También algo que quieras decir, tienes que decir.
We're very sorry to hear about what happened to your son.
Que le sentimos mucho de lo que pasó a su hijo.
When crimes have been committed or may have been committed, contact the police every time.
En cualquier instante, cuando algo pase que no está bien, es importante que contacta con la policía cuanto antes, enseguida.
Pues,
Anytime there's a concern of a crime committed or a need that, when there's help that's needed, we have a community policing team that helps community members with matters like this.
Cuando hay asuntos de crimen y cuando estos eventos pasan, la ciudad tiene un equipo en la policía que ayuda con ese tipo de eventos.
So police officers, but also we have SGV Cares, so mental health clinicians and support teams that can address many different types of needs or connect you to whatever those services are that you may need.
Y la programa en la policía, que aparte de tener gente policía, tiene también programas para apoyar salud mental y ayuda social para apoyar eso es la situación.
situación.
So I know our
Bien.
police department has your contact information and has spoken with them before. I'll make sure they reach out again. If people are victims of crime or a crime has been committed, we want them to call us so that we can investigate. We will always investigate.
Okay. So Dylan dijo que la policía sí tiene sus nombres y número de teléfono y él después de esta noche, mañana, va a ponerse en contacto con la policía de nuevo para que puedan estar en contacto con ustedes.
La cosa es que hicieron un reporte mal. La policía hizo un reporte mal. Okay.
La
Bueno.
situación es de que a nuestro hijo, la persona que lo golpeó, fue y declaró, después que golpeó a mi hijo, fue a la al departamento de policía y se declaró que mi hijo, fue y declaró que mi hijo lo había asaltado y fue al revés,
Sherry,
el que asaltó.
Yes. So he's basically saying that a report was filed, but the report, to their knowledge, was not accurate. Did not accurately reflect what had happened. It was they believe there were some of details that were not correct.
So maybe if okay, what I'll ask is The forum like this to go over an individual police report is not the best way to do it. Maybe we could ask the Curios family, we have police, the police chief and a police captain sitting outside as they always are. Sherry, I might ask if they need help with translation, if you would mind maybe just stepping outside to help translate
Not a
as well.
problem.
Dylan, there was one other item. You had mentioned to me in the conversation schizophrenia. And there is, and I don't know if this program. Oh, okay, all right.
Okay, so ahora en este escenario es muy difícil hablar con de lo que pasó en el informe, pero lo bueno es que tenemos policía aquí, justo
Sí,
enfrente.
La cosa es de que no hubo justicia para mi hijo y eso
La
es
situación es que se cierran todas las puertas. Siempre dicen que no, que él dijo y que esto y mi hijo fue el dañado, el otro anda bien.
se abasan a la palabra en contra de mi hijo. Ese hombre se abasó a su palabra en contra de mi hijo y entonces él no tiene papeles. Ese hombre tiene que estar fuera de este país por el crimen que cometió y mi hijo es ciudadano de aquí y tiene que haber justicia. Yo como madre estoy muy dolida y muy dañada y toda mi familia necesitamos el apoyo y la ayuda de ustedes como ciudadanos, como de aquí, como de la comunidad de Monrovia. Necesitamos el apoyo y la ayuda de ustedes de aquí, pero nunca la hubo, nunca. Estamos muy dolidos, muy dañados.
So, la ciudad sí quiere ayudarles y el primer paso sería ahora mismo pueden hablar con la policía que está aquí enfrente.
Ya venimos a hablar, ya hablamos cantidades de veces, many times, ya hemos hablado y no.
El jefe de la ciudad está aquí mismo y está tomando nota
Sí.
y vamos a estar
Mi
en
hijo
contacto
está
con
muy
ustedes.
dañado, es lo que le quiero decir.
She's really upset and she feels bad.
And we do as well, and we feel very, sorry. As Mr. Feek had suggested, our police officers are in the lobby through those doors, and if you could meet them out there. Angela, could you take, thank you.
Hay una mujer
Thank you.
que se llama Angela, le va a enseñar dónde le pueden hablar con la policía.
Okay, pues, okay, gracias,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Anyone else wanting to speak? Then I will close public comment at this time, public input, and we will move on to our public hearings. PH1, Amendment to Title 17 Zoning Code of the Monrovia Municipal Code, amending regulations pertaining to accessory dwelling units. And we have, Sherry, are you presenting this evening? Ms. Bermejo, our
Yes, I am.
Community Development Director.
Yes, thank you very much, and good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. This is a public hearing for a proposed ordinance number 2025-01. It's for an amendment to the city's zoning code, amending the regulations pertaining to accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units in compliance with state law. And as the city council knows, the city's current accessory dwelling unit was last updated in 2020. Since that date, there have been numerous state laws that have gone into effect to further streamline accessory dwelling units. This proposed ordinance would bring the city's current standards into compliance with the state law. This ordinance has been reviewed once before the Planning Commission during a public hearing, and that took place on December 11th, 2024. At that meeting, the Planning Commission recommended the City Council adopt the ordinance. And then at the last meeting of the City Council on January 21st, staff presented an overview of the ordinance as an advisory review and directed staff to hold tonight's public hearing. If this ordinance is adopted tonight, the ordinance would go into effect within 30 days. So real briefly, the key highlights again of this ordinance is the intent is to streamline and facilitate ADU production here in California. This ordinance would reinforce that all ADUs and JDADUs are by right and ministerial. They only require the issuance of a building permit upon approval. The intent of all this, the laws and the updates, is to really establish uniform set standards in ADU development. And to that end, the Monrovia's ordinance establishes two sets of standards that actually achieve that. The first is, there's two categories. The first is the streamlined permit standards. Those are the minimum uniform state standards that allow for ADU development on single-family lots and all multifamily lots. They produce ADUs that are generally 800 square feet and less. The alternative local standards are the Monrovia-centric standards that allow for development of larger ADUs, but subject to Monrovia-centric objective design standards. And under the alternative local standards, because they can be larger, we are able to limit the number, so there's not as many are allowed on the lot. And so real briefly, under the streamlined permit standards for single-family properties, a property owner can now build up to 3 units, and that consists of one newly constructed ADU, one ADU that's created through the conversion of existing space, and one junior ADU. And then with respect to multifamily ADUs, the development potential under this ordinance, in accordance with state law, has risen. So in addition now to being able to convert or to allow 25% of the number of units in a multifamily dwelling, the provisions now allow up to 8 units, depending on the number of units in an existing multifamily dwelling. And then under the local standards, these are really are looking at the construction of units that are greater than 800 square feet. Under the local standards, a property owner can only do 2, so the options would be one ADU and one JADU. And then within these standards, there are objective design standards. And we'd like to highlight that the existing historic preservation protections that were incorporated in the previous ordinance are carried forward and still maintained within this ordinance. Now, at the January 21st meeting, where there was a lot of discussion and questions, I just wanted to kind of summarize the different items that were asked and spoken about and clarify that parking requirements for ADUs remain the same. There are a lot of limitations. Under the streamlined standards, there are no parking requirements. The parking requirement kicks in under the alternative local standards only when it's not within a half a mile of a transit stop. So the same parameters apply. Another new feature of the ordinance and state law is that the city can no longer require a covenant for ADUs to restrict the sale or use of the unit as a short-term rental. It's important to note, though, that state law still prohibits the use of ADU as a short-term rental, and that is incorporated within the city's ordinance. And a covenant is still allowed and is still required to ensure that the JADU remains owner-occupied. And then lastly, I'd just like to summarize, although the pre-approved plans that we discussed at our last meeting is not part of the ordinance, it's an effort that's running simultaneously to fulfill AB 1332. The City of Monrovia's planning team has been working alongside the San Gabriel Valley COG, and our goal is to have sets of pre-approved plans available for the City of Monrovia to use. The goal of those pre-approved plans is to shorten the review time and also lower the cost for plan check on the city side. The city doesn't have much control over the cost of what the architectural firms are going to charge, but our team's going to do our best to try to get as much information as possible and have it available on the city's website. So with that, that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions of Sherry? Not hearing any. This is a public hearing, and so I will open the public hearing at this time. Is there anyone wanting to speak for or against this item? Just speak on it in general. Not seeing any, then I will close the public hearing and come back to council. If there are no other questions or comments, do we have a motion on PH1?
I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance number 2025-01.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Can we please have a roll call vote?
Council members Belden,
Yes.
Jimenez.
Yes.
Spicer.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dr. Kelly and Mayor Shevlin.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Reports of city manager and staff. We'll start off with RCM 1, City Council Directives Update. Mr. Feek.
Thank you, Becky. The slides before you tonight I put together. Normally, I don't have slides for directives update, but I did on this one because there's just a lot of activity, work that's going to be coming forward out of council directives update. Also, follow-up work after our retreat last week. Also, there's a couple items I'd like to just bring to your attention related to what's happened in the last couple weeks, particularly around federal funding memos and guidelines that have come out. So I want to just address some of those issues here for the city council to review. First, excuse me, let me just get my slides going. First, this is language that's just printed from your directives update. This is part of the council agenda packet. So it just lists out the request and direction of each one of the items. These are some work plan items that we'll continue undertaking throughout the beginning portion of this year. Residents, anyone looking at the agenda can observe all these items. So we want to host a local entrepreneur event. This is primarily focused for youth. Coffee chat with council members. Credgington Station, there's a request by Councilmember Jimenez to consider this as a historic landmark. And I'm not going to go through each one of the items, but council is aware, these are items we've been working on. We expect to have some upcoming meetings here. And I'll also include kind of a schedule of items that'll be coming up before the council here before long. We have a lot of activity. We kind of waited to get us through the holiday season, and then the month of January pretty much was a blur. Already January 1 seems like it was ages ago. But we've been very busy the last several months with activities we hadn't originally planned on, and we're kind of hoping to get back to some of this regular city business in the near future. Last Tuesday, the council, during a goal-setting workshop, we talked about some different activities and work that we can undertake as far as goals for the city manager and the organization. I want to highlight some of these because I think they're important. Many of them are even takeaways from what we learned through the Eaton Fire. One, the city operates an emergency operations center during local emergencies. We've become very well-versed in operating the EOC, but we also have lots of new staff, lots of new council members, volunteers, a lot of people who may have never been in the EOC. So part of our after action is we want to kind of refresh the EOC setup and bring all of our city employees through it, and maybe even do kind of a joint exercise with certain people who are most likely to be in the EOC. What's important is that people are familiar with the EOC, because when there is an incident, they tend to evolve quickly, and we need to be fast acting, and the last thing we want to worry about is how to set up or prepare the EOC. We're going to be holding a study session on the future of MAP and how
Dylan, really quickly, can you
Yep.
just, for those that might be watching, explain what EOC is?
Thank you.
They may not know.
EOC stands for Emergency Operations Center. One of the first activities the city undertakes when there's a local emergency like a wildfire or flooding planned is we open the EOC, which is just a physical space. It can also be a virtual space, but a physical space where staff all come to, and now we can work out of that space together. So we might bring in the police department, the fire department, community services, council members, to where now we're operating out of a same location so that we can respond to the incident quicker. That's what we refer to the EOC. The designated emergency operations center for the city is the community policing room right there on the corner of the police station at Lime and Ivy Avenue. We're going to host a study session on the future of MAP and how we conduct neighborhood engagement. I think this has been a fun project to work on with our new community development director. We want to present some ideas and thoughts for council consideration, but also ask for your input and help as we kind of map out our future of MAP. We're going to provide some information specifically around what we call immigration violations. There's recently been a lot of questions and concerns about how the city of Monrovia will respond to national dialogue around immigration. We've had a policy in place for many, many years, which essentially is we follow state law. We do not undertake federal law enforcement activities, but we want to share a little bit of this information with the public so they're aware, also so that council can answer questions residents might have. An item that we've been talking about and considering for a long time is converting our street lights to LEDs. This will not only significantly improve our lighting across town, but it will also significantly decrease our greenhouse gas emissions, and it will be a significant step in a direction towards reducing our carbon footprint as a city. There's over 3,100 street lights that we use in the city of Monrovia. This project will specifically include the Edison streetlights, which represent almost 70% of our streetlights. The remaining city streetlights will come at a later phase. The city council has been studying the board and commission term limits, as well as going dark in August. This is where we would provide a time of respite for all of our boards and commissions during a portion of August. We'll be collecting feedback and input from all board members and commissioners and returning to city council shortly. Was requested to host a study session on street vendors. The city of Monrovia receives numerous complaints about illegal street vending and sidewalk vending. We want to provide an overview of what the laws are, but also what the challenges are that we face, and determine a best path forward on how to respond. But then also, last on this page is an update on the Anderson House. For some time now, the city has been studying with and participating with the Monrovia with the Monrovia Historical Society on the future of the Anderson House and how we can preserve that structure. Continued goals. Tonight, you'll hear a report back on the status of our auto body shop and the work that we've done to bring them into compliance with their new operating standards. We're going to review Station Square lighting, specifically the band shell, before our summer concert series. We're excited. Can you believe we're already starting to think about and talk about summer concerts, Monrovia Days. The time is right upon us. One item that we're going to be proceeding with in the next 30 days is currently the city has a lease. It's a fairly new lease agreement with Metro Parking for 200 spaces in their parking garage. This was all done in an effort to support the farmers market and increased activities down at Station Square Park, but specifically it was done to identify parking locations for contractors supporting the Station Square developments. Many of the parking garages have been completed or installed. Many of those contractors are parking on site now, but also we've noticed that the use of that parking garage is it's very low, very little use. And the cost that the city is incurring to lease those spaces, the city feels would be better to save. It's approximately $70,000 a year. We're going to review some of our equipment needs in Public Works Department. It's been a while since we did an evaluation, but especially following floods and heavy windstorms, we want to make sure that we've got the right equipment to do public works projects. If anyone, if you think of first responder and you think of police and fire, that's appropriate. But there's a lot of other first responders out there, and we certainly learned that in this latest storm. Council has always done a fantastic job of recognizing staff, attending events, but council specifically talked about recognizing staff again, recognizing some of our volunteers who played a role in our local emergency events, and even host your own service event for staff and volunteers. Staff will provide just a memo and update for council travel and kind of calendaring. Council has a very busy calendar, as you know. We just this is an updated request from council members. We're going to review a resilience plan.
I think you're trying to work us to death, Dylan. I don't know what's going on.
I think we're due for a raise, Larry.
We have a resilience plan request. I think this is something that is to me, one of the most important considerations after last month's incident. Resilience is not necessarily about preparing for one single disaster. It's making sure you're ready for the unknown. It's making sure you're flexible and nimble and able to adapt to whatever comes your way. The Eaton fire, at least for the city of Monrovia, was an evolving disaster. It started out as a windstorm, it became a wildfire, and then it was a massive power outage, and then it was a citywide cleanup, all in a very short window of time. And I'm just very proud to work with our organization, who I think was very resilient. But we still need to continue planning for resilience. We're going to conduct another group activity with the MUSD School Board, and we're going to continue follow with the Monrovia Chamber of Commerce. These are some of the upcoming agenda items that you'll see, and I apologize, it's always harder to see up on the big screen, but on February 18th, we'll hold study sessions on assessment district funding, as well as discussion and direction on the Anderson House. Going to review term limits for boards and commissions, as well as going dark in August. Council is also going to hold an item to move the general election to coincide, move the municipal election to coincide with the general election, part of an effort where we always see greater participation during municipal elections that happen at the same time as the general election. You'll see the item to consider the LED streetlight conversion. Also, just exciting, the city is going to propose to put in the order for the Sineshi Park playground equipment. This is done as kind of a pre-order because it'll take upwards of 6 months at least to get that equipment to arrive. So we're excited to start that project here soon. In March, we have our study session on inclusionary housing ordinance. I apologize, it's taken us a time to get this back here. This has to do with coordinating with the consultants who have done all the research and reporting for us. So my sincere apologies. This is where we'll also discuss the future of MAP and neighborhood engagement. Police Department will also be providing an annual review of its crime data. We also will share the MPD policy on immigration violations. The new district attorney is also making rounds around local agencies. And so if there's information you would like us to share with them, or if by that time the new district attorney has already visited our agency, we'll be able to report back. But we're excited that he's reaching out to local cities to hear feedback and input. On Tuesday, March 18th, we'll hold our study session for street vendors. We'll also discuss campaign contribution limits, and we're going to recognize CERT at a city council meeting. That item may be put in place wherever we have any other CERT activity going on. We've got a couple coming up. All right, so moving past the directives update, now I'd like to provide a quick update on federal funding. On January 27th, many of us were kind of caught off guard when there was an order issued. It was a freeze, essentially, on all federal grants and loans. Caught a lot of us by surprise, and it was something everyone was looking at and reacting to. It was rescinded 2 days later on January 29th by the same official. However, there was confusion when certain spokespersons tried to clarify what happened. These are exact words from reports. President's executive order on federal funding remain in full force and effect, will be rigorously implemented. Federal funding freeze remains in full force and effect. So we've been a little bit concerned. I'm going to go over the federal funding that the city of Monrovia receives here in just a few slides. Fortunately, the city did receive several court orders. This one particularly came from the state of New York. And essentially it said all the cities that receive federal funding, federal agencies cannot pause, freeze, impede, block, cancel, or terminate any awards or obligations on the basis of that memo or on the basis of the president's recently issued executive orders. And it continues on to provide some level of guidance and direction through the court system. So at least for the time being, we're not overly concerned for the impact of this memo, but it is something that we're watching closely to see how it could impact us in the future. The next two slides just showcase a list of, these are all federal appropriations the city has been successful at getting or having earmarks for. Certainly, I want to highlight the many community partners, the support of congressional staff, but these are all federal appropriations. Here is a list of about 10 items that include transportation, public safety, types of awards. Here's another list that shows grants related to rebuilding Canyon Park or mobility programs, and certainly disaster reimbursements. The largest one you can see on there is about a $14.5 million earmark we expect to get for rebuilding Canyon Park. In total, it's about $25.5 million. We've spent a considerable amount of that money, but we don't at this time. I think based on the court proceedings and kind of based on the widespread impact of this, I mean, trillions of dollars were at stake when the memo went out. I think we're very hopeful and optimistic that we can, that it's not going to be much of an impact down the road. But it's something we definitely have to prepare for and think about, something we're going to be watching. So I wanted to bring this in front of council just to be aware. We've got staff at City Attorney's Office, Buffy's office, my office that'll be watching closely for the foreseeable future. As always, I'd like to include my cell phone, my email address, and always a reminder to sign up for the City Manager Update. That's my report this evening on this item.
Any questions of Dylan?
I have a question. Is there, Dylan, money that we give to the feds that can be withheld by the city of Monrovia in terms of taxes or anything else?
No, not, I mean, the city of Monrovia could, we pay things like we pay federal income taxes on wages earned. There's certain things that we do pay to the federal government, but by not paying those, I think would certainly jeopardize the city and employees. So it's very different than getting like a federal appropriation for an item that's been congressionally approved. So I don't, we'd have to evaluate, but I just don't think there's much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then moving on as RCM2, and it's our City Council letter of concerns regarding Lario staging area. And I thought there might be someone here that would want to give public input on this item, public comment. Is there anyone wanting to comment on this item? Not seeing anyone, then I will close that and turn it over to you, Mr. Fink.
Madam Mayor,
Yes?
is it noted that we did receive a letter with regards to that?
That we did, and that was given to us, that was received via email.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I wanted to take this opportunity now to speak a little bit about the Lario staging area. A lot has happened in the last less than 2 weeks. And I want to talk through a little bit about where the site is, what's going on. I know many of you have attended meetings, visited the site yourselves, held countless phone calls and conversations. And I think what the purpose of this meeting is to let any listeners here in the audience, certainly listeners at home, those who will watch this video over time, when things like this happen, in the city of Monrovia, we're in between meetings. Just because the city doesn't issue a press release or doesn't join onto a letter with other cities saying that we vocally oppose this site, it doesn't mean that the city isn't acting or working. Doesn't mean that we're not contacting our representatives. I wanted to use this opportunity to speak a little bit about the site, but also the actions that we have undertaken since this time. So starting here on this site, this is a look, the triangular area you see kind of center of the screen is the Lario staging area. When this site was announced as the location for Phase 1 environmental cleanup for the environmental fire, it caught every local agency by surprise. No one from our local neighbors, no local governments was contacted, communicated with. This land is owned by the federal government. It's U.S. Army Corps of Engineer land that was leased to the county. Last week, we learned that the federal government terminated a lease with the county just prior to announcing this as the site of their Phase 1 cleanup. It sits adjacent to the wash area, which is historically used as kind of infiltration areas for our main San Gabriel Basin aquifer. It sits right between the cities of Duarte and Azusa. And before we were even aware of what was happening, the city officials around the area, Irwindale, Baldwin Park, as well as Azusa and Duarte, immediately responded with a letter in opposition. They began asking for public meetings, even holding several public meetings in their agencies last week. City of Monrovia was never invited or requested to sign on to a letter, but we shared very similar concerns to the City of Monrovia. You can see how close this area is to Monrovia. If you were to get off the 210 freeway and take Irwindale north to Foothill Boulevard and turn west on Foothill Boulevard, it's just a couple hundred yards there and it's on the north side of the road or the right before you get to the wash. I think everyone's pretty familiar with this area. If you're not, as we zoom in, you can see it. It's just this small sliver of space. You can see Encanto Park there, the big green space kind of to the north. And then you can see the wash area, which just kind of meanders from the upper right of the slides down to the lower left. closer video, you can see a roadway. The site is all a dirt site with fencing around it. This is a picture that was taken early last week. Since this time, the site has increased in its operational activity on site. The tent you see in the foreground is right south, kind of parallel to the Foothill Boulevard area. This is a site where they bring in their I'll talk about hazardous waste in just a moment, and I'm going to also make reference to some great resources for folks who'd like to learn more. This is kind of your main staging site where when trucks come into the site, they empty the transport vehicles underneath this staging tent. That's where they begin separating their hazardous waste. Right now, there's also trucks staged to the east, trucks staged to the north, and kind of beyond those trucks you see a little bit to the north is kind of a small gray area that is where they do the battery kind of recycling and storage area. Items are brought into the site. Let me back up. The way that hazardous waste collection and transport and disposal works following a disaster, there's two phases, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is conducted by the EPA, Federal Agency, Environmental Protection Agency, and this includes household hazardous waste like batteries, phone chargers, paints, aerosols, and this work is all done on a 30-minute scan of the parcel, and everything is done by hand by individuals who are trained for collecting household hazardous waste. What cannot be easily collected or identified in that stage, it's passed over to where eventually they come back on a phase 2, which is a much more rigorous collection of the site. And that is done by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Earlier today, a memo was issued by LA County saying that portions of phase 2 cleanup are now beginning. Those are currently all happening in the Eaton Fire Burn area as well. They have made no report or indication that those are happening anywhere outside of the Eaton Burn area. So as trucks are bringing hazardous waste onto the site, they're unloaded, they're separated and sorted, then they are packaged into hazardous waste approved packaging and then put into appropriate containers. There's different containers and packaging for different materials. I won't pretend to know anything about the battery sorting, collection, storage, transport, other than to say I was quite impressed by some of the subject matter experts that they had on site, including people from the Maui fire, 25-year firefighters from Los Angeles and LA who moved to Maui to help with the Maui cleanup, who are now leading this effort. We had San Diego fire battalion chiefs who are, foremost experts on lithium-ion battery, hazardous waste cleanup. Just some very impressive local government professionals who were kind of leading that aspect of the cleanup. The EPA was very quick to point out that decisions made about how this site was selected and all of the, I'm going to call it the politics, the small p politics around that, was outside of their purview. These were professionals that are just here to do a job. They seemed to take all the matters of precautions that I think would be appropriate. Local fire departments, including staff from our own department who work on Monrovia hazardous waste and hazmat efforts, were on site. They were going through protocols. They found it to be a very appropriate setup. I think the biggest concerns that we've seen have been, one, just you can't even call it poor communication, the sheer lack of communication. There just seemed to be a significant disregard for good planning. Just because there's a site that is owned by one doesn't make it the best site. I think EPA and federal officials understand that, and I think the pressure now is find another site, especially as they move into phase 2 site. This site, the expectation is they complete their phase 1 work by the end of February 28th, was the day they provided us. So they have approximately 500 staff working on the cleanup. They have over 35 vehicles going back and forth along, right now it's along the 210 freeway. And they're going to move through those, I think it's almost 9,000 burned homes. This is only for the Eaton Fire Burn area as well. I want to take a moment just to highlight the letter that is before the City Council. This is part of your agenda packet. The way that the letter was formatted based on letters sent by other agencies to the EPA last week. But I think now that there is a phase two, there's a phase two portion that is now being undertaken by a different federal agency. Also considering that we have many federal, state representatives, I just might want to point out that maybe we send this letter to many different parties. I'm going to call it all those interested parties that should hear the city's position on the matter. And the way that we had identified key concerns for the city of Monrovia were really, there's three main issues. First was potential groundwater or soil contamination, and this could really be summarized as those environmental considerations. A lot of cities also have raised concerns about air quality, monitoring, long-term monitoring, but for Monrovia specifically, we receive our groundwater from, a large portion of it from that main San Gabriel aquifer, as you all know. The second issue, at the time we initially reached out to the EPA, our primary concern was a transportation route. A decision was made to move hazardous waste along Huntington Drive. We began lobbying to get it back on the 210 freeway and off of the local streets as quickly as possible. Of course, we all want to see the hazardous waste treated in the area on site near the burn area, but because they made the decision to move it, our primary concern was, well, don't create more issues by moving it somewhere that isn't where we normally translate hazardous waste. I'm just happy to share that they've already made that decision to put it back on the 210 freeway. And then finally, just the poor communication and collaboration efforts by the agencies involved. We all are sympathetic for the work they have to do. It's a monumental task, but they still have to communicate with local agencies and those that are affected. And we wanted to make it very clear that that was our expectation as a local agency. So we've made these positions known to all of our representatives from state and federal representatives. But the letter that you have before you was drafted to provide as kind of an official city position on the matter. So I want to pause here. Actually, before I pause, if I could just highlight these next two slides. The city did create Eaton Fire updates pages on our website. This just provides basic information for community members. This isn't meant to be a catch-all for all Eaton Fire resources. These are just some of those most key and important resources that we wanted to make sure people were ready for. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Dylan, I did want, as another resource, for information, and I thought maybe we would be mentioning it tonight. Last night, the city of Azusa had in their city council a presentation by EPA, and they answered in quite some depth some of the questions that had been posed, especially why and how the site had been selected. And he himself, his name is Harry Allen, and he's been with the EPA for some 27 years, and he's also just had his title here, but he is a team leader in on-scene coordinator for environmental emergency response. At any rate, he said he was actually on the team that chose the site. And the reason, one of the largest or biggest reasons that they chose the site was because of the time frame. And actually, he was kept on using the date of February 25th that they had to, because the 30 days ran from whatever it was in January. At any rate, he said because of the time involved, the site itself, because everybody said, why couldn't you pick Altadena? Why the ground is already contaminated. Why couldn't you do it there? Because there were too many emergency services and people moving around. And because you saw the slide, they needed a very large flat space where they could maneuver large trucks constantly. So I did want to point that out, but the Azusa presentation is excellent in my estimation. And I've got a couple other comments, but I want to give them, my colleagues, their opportunity to ask their questions. And so if we can somehow share that link and the time point at which the EPA gives their presentation, I think it'd be very, very helpful. Colleagues?
Question. I think, Dylan, you summarized it excellently, particularly in the letter, in these three different areas of what we would be concerned about, particularly potential groundwater, the transportation routes, and the fact that it was a poor communication all around. I think a lot of this could have been mitigated had they really communicated to all of the parties that were necessary. I think some of this could have been worked out. I know it's February 4th. You said that this letter already has gone to the it's going to go out?
So the letter has been drafted,
Got it.
and I think the issue before the council tonight is, do you want to provide any direction to me on a letter, changes to the letter inclusion? Do we want to, this is essentially like an official statement on our concerns for the Lario staging area.
Well, I think as everyone will speak to that, because I was going to follow up with getting a list. Not only can we, as a council, provide the voice, but we also provide language for community members who might want to reach out to local officials as well. So if this is, maybe providing emails to some of other local officials, so that it'll give an opportunity for Monrovians to be able to reach out on their own with this information.
Edward?
Thank you so much for preparing the letter. I think it addresses many of the concerns we have. I did have a chance to go out to the site as well and get a tour, and I agree with you that they are folks that are really dedicated to trying to do good and trying to help the community, which, I think all of us, our hearts are with everyone that is so devastated in those communities right now, and they were just running too fast, and they just made decisions without assuming it was still a fire, which I think many of them were operating under that in kind of emergency reaction mode. But I think this is a really well-worded letter. One thing, if we don't have to change this, but I think if we could add as well that it's not only the site of our drinking water, but it's actually a regional recreational trail about 100 yards away from it. I don't think many people are going to want to ride their bike on that path that leads between our national monument and the Pacific Ocean anymore, but they might. And I would just also like us to not only CC the U.S. Army Corps on this one, but I do think we need to send a second letter that is directly to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I think it's Colonel Swenson is the commander that's taking care of the Phase 2 response, to say this site cannot be used for Phase 2. Because of all the reasons we've already outlined here, Phase 2 contamination is even more of a concern. That's with the fine debris, that's all the soil, that's everything. They're just picking everything up and taking it, and I think digging down to about 6 inches in many instances on each site. It's going to be a long process. It sounds like they're maybe keeping that within the fire zone, which I think seems like the best approach to try to limit as much contamination for anyone, anywhere. And I just hope it stays that way. I think we need to strongly tell them that. Thank you.
Well, currently, the Army, what is it, the Army Corps of Engineers? What they're doing is trying to get the residents whose homes has been burned down. They want to go in and get authorization to go in and scrape it, foundation and everything. So I believe it would be more than 6 inches being hauled up out of there.
Yeah, if they take the foundation.
Yeah, they're talking about taking the foundation and everything. But pertaining to your letter, Dylan, I think if you go ahead and send it through that chain of command to get it to the right people, and like Edward said, send a an additional letter directly to the Army Corps of Engineers, letting them know Phase 2, we prefer for it not to happen there. And other than that, I think it's an excellent letter. You know, because a lot of I won't say my constituents, but residents in Monrovia, they're already reaching out to me where they're going ahead, sending letters to Cisneros and Army Corps engineers and all these people already. You know, they're on it already. But even though you could, include that in your letter, but I just want to let you know, a lot of the residents are already on it.
I think that's so good, what you're saying. I think it just provides language for those that want to do something but just don't quite have the language for it. So just additional language. Yeah.
I want to say, Dylan, that I really like the letter. I want to have copies also sent to the cities that were affected, because this is not just a Duarte or Irwindale or Azusa problem. It's an issue that affects the entire San Gabriel Valley, including obviously in Monrovia. I attended the town hall meeting sponsored by Susan Rubio. I was there, and every time that people would ask the EPA a question, they would answer in response, non-responsive, I should say, about how safe the whole process was. They would not answer the questions posed to them. And that really, really impacted me. I personally am against the location where it's located for obvious reasons. We just saw the aerials. It's right next to the San Gabriel River. It's right next to a public bike riding trail, which I have been on. And it's, if you look at the bigger picture, you'll see that it's close. It's closer to housing in Duarte than it is to any other housing. It's not, Zuza's housing is a little bit more far removed. But the danger to groundwater contamination, it's just mind-boggling. I know that things were done in a hurry and it was an emergency, but it really shows you what little thought or planning was done before these poor choices were taken. Getting back to the letter, specifically number 1, potential groundwater contamination, I'm glad that I think the most important thing in that whole thing, Dylan, is where it says the EPA should consider alternate sites. I'm really happy that you put that in. The transportation routes, I understand that they've already backed off and now they're going to do it over the 210. It doesn't make me happy, but it's better than going down Huntington Drive. And the poor communication and collaboration, this can't repeat itself again. And I keep hearing, it's only going to be 30 days or 28 days. Remember what I'm saying right now. This is going to go well beyond that. Things like this have a habit of turning from temporary sites to more extended or even permanent sites. So I really have doubts about the promises that the EPA is making. I'm a positive person, but after seeing some of the responses or non-responses at the town hall meeting, I have my doubts. Thank you.
Yeah, and Sergio, I really encourage you to watch the Azusa meeting. It was a world of difference in terms of the communication and the message that was sent. In terms of, now this is the EPA, and like Edward pointed out, the Corps of Army Engineers will do the Phase 2 portion of it, but his name again is Harry Allen. He said in his estimation, he almost made a promise, but he said the site is not conducive. It's not a good site for Phase 2 remediation. So it ain't, for what it's worth, that he did say that. In terms of the letter, the other things that Azusa wanted, and I keep on bringing up Azusa because the actual site is located in the city of Azusa. It's unincorporated, well, it's owned by the Army Corps of Engineers, but it is within the footprint of Azusa. At any rate, on the monitoring, they wanted ongoing monitoring. Actually, they said not eternity, but they wanted long-term monitoring of both air, soil, and water. And what did we ask for in terms of monitoring? At any rate, they had asked that it, and I don't know if we would like to put an actual time frame on it, or they said they were testing it now. They tested the ground and they've tested the air. and water, from what I understand. And they said that they would share those statistics, specifically with the public, but specifically with Azusa. They also asked for a performance bond or some type of a bond to secure if anyone was damaged. And he said they couldn't do that because of the nature of the government entity, but they said they would like to have that conversation as to alternatives as to how they could make anyone whole should they be damaged. And so I don't, and you might want to talk to Craig about how you would word that, but they did ask, and the EPA did say that they would be more than happy to have that discussion as to how to provide coverage for people that may have damages because of this exercise. And what else was I going to say? At any rate, I do encourage everyone to look at the presentation that they did make.
So Dylan, the EPA is so involved. Why didn't we invite them here?
I think the reason I didn't reach out to them, invite them here. I think we've all had conversations either with them or we've attended meetings they were at. I think part of the reason that they're going to meetings of Azusa and Duarte is because the original letter, it's in their communities. There has been discussion about the EPA will attend any meeting of a local agency that wants them there.
Dylan, I will tell you, this guy actually handed out his cell number last night too, and and so he would answer any question, whatever it was. He also lives in the area, but he was exceedingly apologetic. I get it. And he seemed sincere about it, but again, the total lack of communication is more than unacceptable.
I think my rationale for putting the letter together and provide this information, we've all, several of us have been involved, have been on site. At this point, I feel the EPA is already being more accessible and open about here's what's going on. I still think the frustration will always exist about why this site, how it got there. I think the focus and our focus has been how do we keep, to Councilmember Belden's point, how do we make sure that this does never become even considerable for phase two?
Right.
It is owned by the same agency that's going to be doing phase two cleanup though. And so I think making these necessary corrections on the letters, the reason monitoring wasn't included was because there's a rumor that the state may overtake a long-term monitoring. I don't know where that came from, but it was brought up during my site visit on Friday. So whoever ends up doing that, we can include that if you want. But I think at this point, there's plenty of information that's out there. What I'll do in this week's city manager update is I'll include a recap. We'll include a copy of the amended letter. We'll make sure it gets to all the appropriate parties with the changes requested here tonight. We'll include some links to resources, including other council meetings where people can watch and review and make sure to provide them the information we can. I think that's one area where Monrovia has always been able to thrive is we can provide information to people. We give them that original content, that original source. Here's how you can get involved. To Mayor Pro Tem Dr. Kelly's point, we'll make sure that we include some of the links if people want to connect with those representatives making decisions. They've all shared their information.
I also want
We'll give
copies
them
of the
numbers.
letter, of this letter going to the neighboring cities.
We'll make sure all of our neighboring cities get it. The city manager of Azusa sent me presentation slides. We've already got the meeting minutes, so we've been in collaboration quite a bit. I think there's a lot of information here. We'll keep sharing that information with the public, how they can be involved. And I think really the next steps now, we'll get the letters delivered to everybody, but we're going to monitor and watch what phase two, kind of what happens with these future stages of cleanup look like. And if, of course, as things progress or change, I'll certainly be providing updates to the city council. We'll be providing updates to the community because I do think, to Sergio, to your point, just because they want to continue with the phase one site assessments by the 28th, I still think the site is going to be operational beyond that. You're absolutely right. And there's just a lot of hazardous waste cleanup that has to happen. And I think what has happened since is a lot of cities have mobilized and a lot of vocal residents have come out, and I think they're starting to hear the message. So
Dylan, I did want to mention on the alternative sites, they did make it very clear that they aren't considering alternative sites, but they desperately need additional sites if they're to comply by the February 25th date, which he thinks they can do it. They've got much larger teams than they had, like for the Maui fire and other fires. And so he did say, in regard to the picking the site too, as well, they did look at the sites, and as I said, they said that there was too much activity going on. It was also staging right outside of that by Edison and other entities, so that they weren't available. And now that those entities are now starting to leave the areas, that those sites are becoming available, and they are actively seeking out those areas for additional siting so that they can meet the February 25th date.
So again, they're not looking for alternate sites, they're just looking for more sites.
More sites so that they can meet the February 25th date.
Or 28.
Well, if you consider 30 days, it actually started in January when they started working.
I think right now it would be very dangerous. We can't be subjective about where they're going to do or what they're going to do. Right now, what we know is phase 1 operations are going to happen at this site. Today, it was announced that phase 2 have already begun in the Eden Fire burn area, and we're waiting for future announcements or what the plans are. We want to be communicating to them that when they decide future phase 2, it's not happening at this location. That's the
Dylan,
plan.
maybe we can't get them to choose an alternative site, but if they are adding additional sites, they could certainly let us know. That's the burn that we didn't know. So do you have enough information from us? Okay, great. Thank you very much. It's a very emotional issue. But then on top of that, when you're not notified, it makes it even much worse. I did want to note that Gil Cisneros did send a letter to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency in Washington, D.C. with his own set of questions. That was on January 27th. And there was a longer version of the letter, but in an email, then he says, as such, I request immediate responses to the following questions. And he wanted to know about the selection of the site, about rules and requirements for local notification, how long will this site be in operation, what specific public health protections and environmental safety protocols have been put in place, and like I said, how was the LARIO staging area selected? What financial assistance or grant assistance will become available to cities that may incur damage on their roads or other public property due to the operations of this site? And like I said, Azusa added that they're talking about really the citizens for any damage that, or from contamination or whatever. And then he wanted to know also, please provide the name, title, and contact information for the official leading the establishment and operation of the site who can respond to questions from residents about impacts to their health and safety. And I believe you have this letter as well, Dylan. So at any rate, I did want to let you all know that letter does exist from Mr. Cisneros. And on Friday, when talk about being spread thin, I was the only one available, but and attended a little round table with Assembly Member John Harabedian, and it was Sierra Madre, Laverne, La Cañada, Flint Ridge, I believe that was, and the county, city of Pasadena, and Claremont, and Monrovia. I don't think I missed. Oh, and Rancho Cucamonga. And they were all sharing their story about the fire experience. And universally, it was community communication. Everybody had a story about Edison, and everybody is very, very, very angry with Edison and what could he do to, help improve that. And then we went around and talked about what our cities are doing, and I talked about the great job that Dylan does at keeping everyone informed, that they were having a staff retreat and talking about doing an kind of a recap and a review of the situation. Also asked him about, and I had to throw in there at the end to everybody, it was pretty fire related. And I also said we would really like his help too in making sure that we have funding for homeless and mental health, substance abuse issues, and help us with our programs there. So we asked him for just about everything under the sun, actually. But I was really, really encouraged at his tone and tenor and willingness to listen. A debrief was the word I was looking for. Debrief at the staff level. So at any rate, everyone's on board, and also had a side conversation with the county, and I said they don't get a pass either. So we should have been informed. So there you go. So you got it? All righty. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very, very much. Again, a very emotional topic, and a lot of time and energy has been spent and will be spent in the months and probably years to come. Okay, moving on to RCM3, update on automotive repair businesses.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. I just, coming in as your new community development director, wanted to have the opportunity to give you an update on our automobile repair facility operational requirements, specifically the implementation of that. As the City Council knows, this ordinance was put into place in June of last year, and it had really two purposes. The main purpose was to establish minimum operating requirements for auto repair facilities that were legal, non-conforming within the city, and also allow for a permit process for those businesses that had physical constraints to go through the Development Review Committee and obtain an automobile repair business operation permit for a waiver of some of those standards, with the goal of not putting any business out of business. When we were speaking about operational requirements, the target areas that were being focused on was working outside of bays. We wanted to make sure that businesses could do all the repair work within an enclosed structure. We addressed long-term storage on site, the storing of vehicles on public street, as well as outdoor storage of equipment. Going into the implementation, the city, we knew, had 58 auto repair businesses. 80%, close to 80% of those were considered legal non-conforming. The ordinance was drafted in a way that really helped corral the existing non-conforming businesses under the operational standards that were established. And at the time, in June, staff anticipated about 14 businesses needed that operational permit through the DRC process. To date, I'm happy to report that we have 8 businesses that have successfully completed the ABOP process, ABOP for short. We also, out of that 14, have 2 that going through initial phase review, turned out they don't need that permit. That was a big plus. We're down to a final 4. This is kind of by the numbers of the final 4 that are staff is currently working on getting them to the finish line. As you can see from the slide, that we have started the enforcement process. We do have, of those 4, one of the businesses has submitted their application that's currently under staff review. The other 3 that have received citations for noncompliance at this time, our team is actually making site visits, educating them about the process and getting them to the finish line. I'm feeling very confident that although we have 3 in that red category, our goal is to be getting them out of that red category and getting everyone under the permit successfully. And when we do that, this project and program does not end. I think what our team has learned is that in moving forward, we are going to have an enforcement strategy. And for topics and items that come up like this in code enforcement, our team is now thinking about enhancing the way we do business, and we'd like to create these task force monitoring programs. I think what we've learned is for topics like this or for these types of issues, having one single code enforcement officer is not easy. We can't cover as much and as quickly as we want to with all the other items that are taking place. So with our task force new methodology, I think we're going to see increased monitoring. We're also going to allow, this is going to allow us to grow the skills of all our officers. And it's also going to serve as a model for other things that our team is going to need to address, such as vendor enforcement, which we will be talking to you very shortly in the coming month. So with that, I'd like to conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry.
Hey, Sherry, I guess I'll start off. I want to thank you and your staff for all the hard work that you guys have put into this new ordinance. I know it's going to be hard. I don't know.
You're talking
I
to
know.
Sherry?
That happens to me all day long in the office.
I know it's been a long road, right? But I'm glad that this new ordinance is in place and we're almost at the finish line.
Yeah, thank you. And
So-
thank you.
Thank you so much
I-
for everything.
Well, I appreciate it, and I also want to thank you for being in attendance at our DRC meeting as the liaison to this process. I think staff felt the support going through this, so I want to thank you for that.
You're welcome. That's all I have.
Do we have, when do you think it would be reasonable for us to go back for an update?
Well, if you'd like, maybe when we talk about the vendor ordinance, we can give you a quick update on where we're at, the
Okay.
street vending. I really believe we're going to try to get these last final four wrapped up fairly quickly.
Okay, great. That would be great. Thank you.
Good.
Any other questions of Sherry? Thank you very much.
So moved.
Okay, then we will be moving on to reports of city council members, and I'm going to start off tonight with Larry Spicer.
Okay, real good. So I had the opportunity to attend a conference, the New Mayors and Council Members Academy in Sacramento. And, you know, some of the things like what we were talking about tonight, one of the sessions was in regards to developing an effective city council and city manager team. And the key to good governance is city
communication.
success, right? But under that is something that the EPA should think about. It emphasizes on collaboration, communication, and a clear governance structure. That's something that would have helped them out with this whole situation. But in just a small summary, it was a great conference. I learned a lot. When it got to the financial part of it, there was no way that the lady that was giving the presentation could outdo Buffy. Because everybody was sitting there rubbing their head because, you know, the lady that was giving the presentation, you know, these are all new people on the council, and the things were really over their head. And I've been on the council for a while, and she threw me for a loop. So I know we're good here in Monrovia. But like I said, overall, it was a good conference. One other item, we have a job fair tomorrow at the adult school. We have over 550 employees that have signed up for the fair. We have 400 400, I think 31, Dylan? Somewhere around there? 450? 400, I believe it's 400 employees. I just can't remember. But it's going to be exciting. It's going to be an exciting job fair. And I want to thank the city, for helping us out with the signage and the utilization of the delineators and all, everything that we need, the city just stepped up to it.
You're welcome,
Okay. But because it's Black History Week, I just want to give a little Black history tonight. So there was a gentleman named Robert Smalls who was born in 1839 and he passed away in 1915. But he was a slave man who became a Civil War hero and a congressman and a champion for black rights. During the Civil War, Mr. Smalls was forced to work as a deckhand on a Confederate supply ship, the CSS Planter, on May 13, 1862. He executed a daring escape. While the white officers was asleep on shore, Mr. Smalls and other enslaved crew members took control of the ship.
Wow.
They were disguised in the captain's coat and hat, and he navigated past the Confederate checkpoints. He picked up his family and other enslaved people, then sailed the ship to the Union forces, surrendering it and securing freedom for himself and his crew. Mr. Small provided a valuable Confederate military intelligence to the Union. He became a naval pilot and later commanded Union vessels, making him one of the first black captains of a U.S. military ship. His bravery helped convince President Lincoln to allow black men to serve in the Union Army. After the war, Mr. Smalls returned to South Carolina, where he bought the house of his former enslaver and lived in it with his family. He became a U.S. congressman, serving 5 terms and fighting for the black voting rights, education, and civil rights. He also helped establish the first free public school system in South Carolina. So Mr. Small's story is about encouragement, intelligence, and leadership. He transformed from an enslaved man and became a national hero, proving that black Americans could lead, govern, and shape the country's future.
All right, very great story.
So, that concludes my report. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Miss Edward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you for that.
Oh,
Councilmember
you're
Spice.
welcome,
That was
man.
great. I too had the pleasure to attend 2 recent Cal City events. One was the Environmental Quality Committee, an opportunity to learn a little bit more about what they're lining up to do for the next year. And Cal City's, the 2025 advocacy priorities are, there's 5 or 4 of them here, to protect local revenues and expand economic development tools, strengthen climate change resiliency and disaster preparedness, strengthen and modernize our critical infrastructure, as well as to secure investments to prevent and reduce homelessness and increase the supply of affordable housing, things I think that we all stand behind. Of course, there's going to be nuances to what we want to support or not, and that's some of the things that these individual committees look at. This one has an environmental quality portfolio that's focused on any bills that become through session and gives a chance. There's an actual lobbyist for Cal Cities that will focus on those and helps to highlight ones that we want to support potentially within the committee, and then those would get passed up. Focused on water, air quality, climate change, solid waste and recycling, coastal energy, CEQA, of course, and disaster preparedness, which I think is always really critical to me. The one thing I did hear, and I'm sure, Dylan, you've heard, and I think many of us have heard about a little bit, but the CAL FIRE was supposed to release these fire hazard severity zoning maps. I shouldn't laugh about it. It's just unfortunate that the timing was just right now at all, in serious time. And those were actually supposed to be released in January. They've held back. I think they're actually updating the maps right now. But it is something that will affect all of us in Monrovia too, because we should expect that a lot more areas will be in those, and I don't think they've figured out how they're going to adjust the maps, because I did hear just recently they said like all of Altadena was not inside those maps, but they just had to figure out if they're going to change that or not. So to come in terms of what that will mean, what that will mean for people's insurance as well, I think is what we really need to look out for. And then last week, I also had a chance to attend the Cal City's Mayors and Council Members Academy, like a little refresh, or not totally refresh, but also just an introduction for newbies like me to get to know what we can do, what we can't do, besides asking Craig, and just an overwhelming amount of information, which was outstanding, but covered topics as Larry, Councilmember Spicer already mentioned, but also including effective advocacy, some of the key city issues that we're going to be looking at, how we can make sure we have a great city council, city manager relationship, which I do think we do have here in Monrovia already, and we can always make it better, but we are lucky in that. And then the financial responsibilities on our city revenues workshop, which was enlightening for sure to see how we're on track on our budget, but also all the new questions I get to ask you and Buffy to make sure we are on track. So to be continued on that matter. I did want to just talk briefly about water, since I mentioned environmental quality. There's been a lot of discussion of whether or not we have enough water in our systems lately. And I think water in Southern California, water in California, water in the West is really complex. I think many of you know I have a background in environmental sciences, and water resources, something I've worked on in Southern California for a long time. I did have a chance to look at the water reservoirs in the California state on January 7th. I looked at those numbers, looked at the numbers recently. Those numbers are extremely high. We're above our historical thresholds in almost all the reservoirs throughout California because of the great rain years we had the past 2 years. We're in a drought again. You know, it hasn't rained much at all. We're going to have rain tonight, luckily enough. So it is a little confusing to understand that where we get our water from is complex, all the way from Colorado to Northern California. But the fact of the matter in regard to the fires, and especially the Palisades fire, I think they're still trying to figure out exactly what happened in the Eaton fire case. Those large supplies feed down into our local supplies, and then we have distribution reservoirs. Those are the ones we see oftentimes, like on our hillside, those little round ones, or maybe in your neighborhood. The distribution reservoirs are the ones that ran out of water during some of those fires. So it was, and in one case, of course, there was one reservoir that was not filled for maintenance. And of course, those systems are not designed really to be able to fight the type of fire we had, the amount of people, the amount of engines, all using that resource at one time. And I do know that our team here at Public Works ensured that our local reservoirs were filled up before the storms came through. And I know we've looked at, I think I've talked to Alex before, we've looked at how much capacity we have and what we can do and what we need. So I hope we can do that again, though, here locally, is just look at that when we talk about resiliency planning, and just what capacity do we have, what capacity do we need, if we need to make any changes or not. But I think it was in LA Times 2 articles just about the fact that there was a water release that was requested recently. The water was not requested by any of the local water providers or needs, so no farms or no one in Southern California needed that water that was released. It was just released for someone's publicity stunt. So
Was that the president?
that would have been the president, yes, Mr. Spicer. It's complex. If you have questions, we have a great team here at the city that can answer those questions for you. But we're in a good place right now. Thank you.
And I'll just add to that, I just happened to run into Tom Love with the director from the Upper San Gabriel District, and also Tony Fellow. In fact, I saw him on Monday, and he agreed that, yes, we've got lots of money, wouldn't it be nice, water right now. But Mr. Love and also Mr. Fellow have said that they'd be more than happy to come and talk to us and give us a little update. And also Robert Gonzalez, who's the mayor of Azusa, is also the water quality control liaison. Yeah, so he's offered to come in and talk to us as well. Tamala.
I get to go before Sergio. Yes. No. I have the privilege of, or had the privilege, I should say, of traveling to Sacramento for the Housing Community Economic Development Policy Committee. And we had the privilege of being able to work on a priorities work plan. And so there are just 3 priorities that we talked about, and I want to talk about it tonight a little bit. One priority that we want to work on is to strengthen local control and land use. This is concerning housing and economic development. Strengthen local control and land use decision-making. And there's 3 bullet points underneath that, so I'll just kind of touch on a couple. To advocate for legislation that preserve local control over housing and zoning decisions, ensuring cities retain authority over land use and development processes. Push back against state-mandated one-size-fits-all approaches, emphasizing the importance of local flexibility to meet housing goals in ways that align with our communities. To provide resources for cities to navigate the RHNA process, the RHNA process, ensuring realistic, achievable targets that reflect local capacities while maintaining compliance. And so that was all under the first one. And the second one, priority, a work plan for the year, is addressing affordable housing and homelessness. And in that regard, to advocate for increased state, always need more money, and we'll see how that works, and federal funding for affordable housing, to push for flexibility in how cities can allocate these funds to meet their unique affordable housing needs. Work with state leaders to refine the RHNA process, ensuring housing allocations are fair, equitable, and based on actual infrastructure and community resources. Support locally driven homelessness solutions that address specific community challenges, including mental health and job placement resources. And the last one, concerning the 2025 work plan priorities, is supporting economic development and resilience. Explore new tools for economic development that align with housing growth, such as workforce development programs and tax incentives. We're going to advocate for state and federal funding to help cities recover from natural disasters while addressing infrastructure needs tied to new housing. Support cities in balancing climate adaptation efforts and local development priorities. And those just a few, but what I really appreciated about being able to go and be a part of this policy committee is that there are a lot of people that were very interested in working. Sometimes you go to meetings and there's a lot of complaints, but there's not a whole lot of solution-based discussions. And so I really appreciated being a part of this policy committee where there were city leaders that were really interested on not just naming the problem, but how can we work together to come up with workable solutions that are going to meet our unique needs for our city. So I felt both were at work at this meeting, so I really appreciate it, even if it was for one day, being able to go up for that. Thank you.
All righty. And Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too had the privilege of attending the League of California Cities Academy, and if I were to sum up my experience in one word, it would be compassion. The attendees, we all share, well, what city are you from and where is that? And when I would say, well, Monrovia is about 2 cities east of Pasadena, immediately their eyes would open and they would say, were you affected by the fire? And they were genuinely concerned. The cities that were a little farther away, they would say, what was the damage? How many structures? I said we had minimal damage structures, but we had a lot of damage and cleanup with the wind. But most importantly, we had the opportunity to learn from the experience so that if that happens again in our area, we're better prepared to deal with it. We were blessed that the winds died out at just the right time. But again, it could happen again. The local cities that were there, the San Gabriel Valley, they were very aware of the Lario staging area, and they asked us what we were doing. And I told them, well, we're planning on sending out a letter of concern. We're very concerned. It was as much a surprise to us as it was to anybody else. So it was the compassion, it was the concern of our cities, whether they be neighboring cities or whether they were in the Central Valley or beyond that in California. They all cared about what we were doing. Sure, we had great workshops, but it was that concern of the other cities and just learning from the experiences of the other attendees. As well, I attended the Habitat for Humanity's open house that they had. They had a location here in Monrovia on Huntington Drive, but they relocated to 800 West Chestnut Avenue, and they too were impacted by the by the Eaton Canyon fire. They had a project in Altadena in 2023, and it burned completely to the ground. In addition to that, they said that several other partners that they work with also suffered great loss, so they were asking for donations. I was really impressed with their new location at 800 West Chestnut Avenue. I want to thank them for what they're doing here in the San Gabriel Valley. I also had, along with other members of our council here and our mayor, attended the Eaton Carathon at Community Media of the Foothills. As I walked in, a little bit late after the opening, I saw our city manager there. They're doing a great job describing all the resources and volunteer opportunities and information for people that need our support. Not just people that live in Altadena, but people that have businesses in Monrovia that have been affected by this fire. Again, it's not limited to one community, it's the whole entire San Gabriel Valley. So I want to give a thank you, shout out to the community media, the Foothills, for having that very timely and needed event. God bless you. And finally, there was a special Lunar New Year event here in Monrovia at our Monrovia Public Library. It included music, dance, arts, and crafts. Congressman Gilbert Cisneros attended, and our mayor was there. There was a proclamation honoring the library staff for the wonderful job they did. Especially, I want to give a shout out to Miss Annette for organizing the event. It was great, and I think you attended after I left, Edward. So I'm really proud of what the library staff is doing to celebrate the diversity and beauty here in Monrovia. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Yes, I also attended the Lunar New Year dance, and it was one of the performers or groups was from the Music Center, I believe. Very, very impressive. It was really nice, and that Mr. Cisneros came out, Congressman Cisneros came out and acknowledged our library, which was very nice. And talking about Mr. Cisneros and then our new representatives, John Harabedian and also Sasha Perez, I've attended something or run into them or whatever, and through communication have invited all of them to come. Now, I think possibly Mr. Cisneros might be here for our meeting on the 18th.
Oh, really?
I think, yes.
Is that-
I don't know that for positive, but I did talk with Jacob Wallach, and he was saying that he did have that date available, and so at any rate, maybe that we will see him on the 18th. And the event with Mr. Harbedian, he was very thankful for the use of the community room at the library. It was kind of a small, intimate gathering, which actually made it nicer, and everyone spoke very openly. He said, hey, I want you to feel free to speak your mind here. But yeah, communication was really one of the top issues. There was a wild story from out of Rancho Cucamonga about having reciprocal aid and getting turned down, and they didn't want it. So I don't know exactly what that was all about, because they had people that could do hazmat things, and so I don't know if there was something that either whoever was in control of it, the EPA or whoever it was, that they didn't want the help, so that was interesting. But it's nice to know that Mr. Harabedian is very attentive and wanted to hear what we had to say. And we all suggested we need to have more little sessions like that where we can share. And then going back to that EPA, and you were talking about no communication. One of the Azusa council members did, and it was agreed, I mean, they all agreed, but he very sternly scolded the EPA for not having reached out and said, I want you to take this message back to your superiors and let them know how we feel disrespected and so on and so forth. But at any rate, and the man took it very, very well, and he said he certainly would. And talking about also other, like town halls, State Senator Sasha Perez and Assemblymember Harabedian had a town hall on January 30th. It was called Rebuilding Together, Navigating Recovery Resources. I watched it online. Again, the audience was much different. They were talking to homeowners who had lost their homes, and the various agencies that were talking to them did gather some really good information from that. So when you could turn down the dial a little bit and get a message through or a question through and people talk, the information did flow and it was very informative. But not having the communication just created just total anger, outrage, and justifiably. At any rate, and I'll make sure that Dylan has that link also too for the one that Sasha Perez did. That's just another one if you guys want to look at it. And I did want to again plug our State of the City next Tuesday, the 11th at 6 p.m. The block party kind of event reception, highlighting all of our departments, and the message then at 7 p.m. Should be a great event. Looking forward to it. And I don't think I have any more. We won't be having a council meeting before that, so happy Valentine's, everybody. And that our city is having wonderful events in Old Town and carriage rides and things like that. Check it out. And I just constantly praise Dylan. He did an absolutely fantastic presentation at the coordinating council on Monday about the fire and resources and things like that. And when I was with Assemblymember Harabedian and the other mayors and city managers, and I said to the city managers, look, I'm not telling you, I'm not making you look bad or giving you more work, but I said, I have to tell you, my city manager does an awesome weekly update, and then in emergencies, he does it on a daily basis or whatever it takes. I said, and he keeps us informed. So I don't know if there was any real grumbling there under the breath, but at any rate, with that, I will, that's, I guess I do actually have something official that I'm supposed to be doing under my report. Appointment to fill the unscheduled vacancy on the Community Services Commission for an unexpired term ending June 30th, 2027. And our council liaison to Community Services is Larry Spicer. And then along with Community Services Commission, Commissioner Chair Jeannie Mills, and Recreation Manager Rebecca Sandoval, and Community Services Director Tina Cherry. They're out in the back. They're yeah, and at any rate, they interviewed all applicants, and their recommendation is to appoint Amy Castro to the commission to fill the unexpired term of Fernando Villegas, ending June 30th, 2027. And without any objection, I would like to so appoint Ms. Castro to fill that unexpired term. Now, do we do an actual motion on that? No? Okay. So we have appointed Amy Castro to that position. Thank you very much. And we don't have any administrative reports this evening. We have no continued public input or items pulled from the consent calendar. Our next scheduled meeting is February 18th, but don't forget the State of the City on February 11th. At any rate, we'll see you back here February 18th, 7:30 p.m. And this evening, we are adjourning in the memory of Patricia Hetling, grandmother of Matt McCarthy, Recreation Coordinator, Community Services, and Su Young Theng, grandmother of Amy Lai, Administrative Assistant in Public Works. And our hearts and prayers go out to them, to their families, and we wish them comfort and just love. And with that, then we are adjourned at 9:42.